go. Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome back to Celtic World Order podcast. As always, with Steve O'Matt. It's a pleasure to have you back here on the channel with me. And it's, of course, a pleasure to have my other right-handed man, mother bald brother. No beard on him, but just beautiful. And nonetheless, always fantastic to have you. Is, of course, Stevie. Stevie boy, how we doing? Because last night, against the odds, I guess a bit of a surprise. In the homeland of Porsche, it was Brendan Rodgers. Maybe it's a Honda Civic Type R that ran away and took the victory lap. So I ain't gonna lie, a pleasant surprise, but maybe just the shot in the arm that we probably need at this point with the game on Sunday ahead, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of what that will do for the squad's confidence more than anything else, it was definitely a result that even the most eternal optimist probably wouldn't have seen coming based on how lackluster we were at home. So what we got last night was, again, a quality Stuttgart team, and really, we had to defend for large parts, which we knew we had to, but we seemed more solid in terms of our defending than we have done in recent games. There was still obviously a couple of chances that hit the back of the net, both quite rightly offside. But overall, a good performance, a great result. And as I say, what we can now look forward to is Sunday with a bit more optimism. And you've switched your mic off.
I'm trying to give you a bit there. I'm trying to get your piece. So
you keep me right, though, mate.
Keep me right. That's that. Because there's a wee bit of background noise or some stuff or some dogs roaming about and stuff. So try to keep it calm in between. But no, you're absolutely right. The game last night, I think it was a dead rubber. Of course it was. I think that's the way most of us were looking at it. There's no, again, I hate using that term because there's no such thing. You want to win every game. Yeah. But I think realistically, when we went into that game, we're thinking to ourselves, right, it'll be what it'll be. Obviously, when you score that early on, you think, right, okay, maybe we can kick on, give them a fright. Yeah. And who knows? Obviously, it started to fade out. The quality wasn't there. But nonetheless, it was about getting a performance in, looking the part, and as we say, looking towards the weekend, because I think that, there was a lot of confidence, blindly or otherwise, across the fan base. And I think for everybody that thought there was going to be a tank, and there was people that thought that this was in it. And I seen when the lineup came out, I thought, well, do you know what? That really is a lineup that tells you that, yep, we're not wanting to disgrace ourselves, but Sunday's more important. Let's kind of try and protect some folk there. But it gives you some food for thought, and it gives you a bit of positivity as well, because after Stuttgart, after Hibs, you wouldn't have went into another loss and then into a game like that. It's about momentum, it's about changing attitudes and things like that. So absolutely, positive for the start. So we'll talk about that. Obviously, we'll talk about some of the head scratchers, perhaps, in terms of decisions that the manager's going to have to make about selection getting into the weekend. And, of course, get yourselves involved. Let us know what your thoughts on it. What are you thinking about the certain individuals last night? Do you think that there's, big decisions, particularly, let's say, with the goalkeeping? Is there big decisions to be made at the weekend? And they might seem like obvious choices to us. Are they obvious to you? And do you think that Barton Neill will go and do it? Because we know that he's a bit of a tried and trusted. So get your comments in there. We'll try and bring them up, get you involved in there. And of course, if, as always, if you want to support the channel, get a thumbs up, get a subscribe, get a follow, and all the usual social medias are down below and they're on that ticker tape as well. So thanks for joining us. But yes, let's go straight off then. In terms of the lineup, as I said, I looked at it and I put it into our group chat and I says, I think, mate, this is very much telling you exactly what you can expect looking at the weekend. Protecting guys, maybe putting guys, giving them a chance, but all changed. Donovan, Murray, Trusty, Sarachi at the back, McGregor, Hatate, Yang, McCown, Maeda and Adamu. So, lots of change there. Huge. Yeah. And let's not forget that, Stuttgart are a quality team. Absolutely. They multiple goal buffer. but it was pretty much a full strength team for them as well. I think that'll be missing on some people. They were a team that were putting out their best foot forward and still want to win, mate. We didn't get anything handed to us here. So that in itself, with a reduced rate of Celtic side, if you can't take that as a positive, then I don't know what is.
No, absolutely not. No, I think just balancing the two games, home and away, I think what we discussed and what we saw in the home leg was a different work rate that we had last night. That was the thing. Last night, we all seemed across the park, from front to back, everybody seemed to dig in that wee bit more. I think that there was certainly a few people, and ourselves included, when we talked on after. That was what annoyed us the more. We didn't doubt that Stuttgart were the better team, no problem at all. There was no argument there. But again, we were disappointed in how we kind of stood off them a wee bit more. We didn't stand off them last night. We had to dig in. Everybody did their job very, very well. And, a 1-0 win in Germany is not something that we're very used to. Generally we go to Germany and we've been on the end of, kind of some bad results, some good performances and bad results. But to come away with a win, as I say, was more pleasing than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. And, someone coming in, I just see a comment here, which obviously is very generous, is Glasgow Boys saying that there's an Axom night with Charlie McGrew that they can't go to. So if anybody wants that, then, connect. There you go, mate. Celtic fans looking out for each other. Love that. Absolutely brilliant. But yeah, look, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the performance. You'll have watched multiple other breakdowns of it, so I don't want to labour it. I want to talk more about the performances of certain individuals and framing that in the question of, have they put themselves in the frame, have they put themselves in the box, have they got the jersey, have they got the gloves? Obviously, as we start off early on, the game itself is, who would have thought it? A goal that early, and it's a really good goal, by the way. It was good to see us going at it for the off. And I've got to say, Adamu, it was good to see him. We needed to see what he could offer, because we've obviously went and persisted with Finchara. I've said my piece on him. There's a lot to like, but there's a lot as well that I'm thinking, right, at this moment in time, do I think that at Celtic we've got a striker that between now and the end of the season is going to score 5, 6, 7 vital goals, go on a run and really, similarly what he did on his loan period? Are we going to have that at Celtic? And I'm not really sure, mate. But in terms of that first goal, I thought it was a good run, direct. The thing I did like about Adamu is that it was a bit more direct, a wee bit more dynamic in terms of his movement, using his pace, and of course, it's a good layoff. It's a really well worked goal. It's a composed finish for Cal McGregor, Luke McCowan, and 1-0 that early on, absolute shot in the arm, brilliant, love it. But it was totally a shot for out of the blue for me. I was sitting there going, right, okay, I actually text the group and goes, what the fuck? I was laughing, always laughing, it was that ridiculous. But I don't think that from there on we really picked up that level of momentum and we kind of pushed forward. But it was still a good performance, mate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was literally, less than 5 minutes after that there was a very good chance for Dyson at the front post, and it just kind of, I don't know whether it got caught under his feet. He couldn't get enough of an angle on it to get the ball on target. But that's been the story of Dyson's season, really. So if that had gone in, two up, I think Stuttgart were obviously a wee bit slower to start in the game as the game progressed. Definitely they stepped it up and realised, oh, wait a wee minute here, Celtic are here for a game. So yeah, I mean, yes, it's all about, as I say, that quick start, getting us that wee bit of something to defend and play off of. Adamu, totally different player to Kvanchara. Absolutely agree with that. Kvanchara is more of a kind of use your body to get yourself in front of a defender. as we've said before, doesn't really get as many fouls for defenders dragging him down as they do. But yeah, Adamu, good movement, saw that McCowan was in a better place, good pass right in front of him, and then, absolutely fine. So we'll absolutely take it every day of the week. And now, yes, as you say, conversations need to be had about who deserves to retain their place going into Sunday.
So, let's have a look at it. In terms of the game, obviously we can go through as we would normally do and do blow by blow and stuff, but I think it's neither here nor there. Ultimately, it's a good performance. There's positives to take from it, from individual performances. And it is rightly been pointed out there. It's not to play it down. It is still ultimately a defeat in Europe, and you don't achieve the ultimate goal, which is obviously getting that big stone around their neck off in terms of, getting through a knockout round. So, yeah, that in itself is disappointing. There's a wee bit of reflection. And with these kind of things, mate, hindsight it's brilliant, isn't it? It's brilliant to look back at any event in life and think, see, we should have done this, or I would have done that, or I wouldn't have done this. And we can look at it. Do you actually think, let's just jump straight in, because everybody wants to talk about it. Sinisalo, I personally thought, I've sat here on the show and I've been honest about him. Do I think he is 100% the finished article? The option, the heir apparent, the guy that is going to take the gloves permanently full time and he's going to have that level of consistency? I'm not so sure. But again, the sample size is small. I just look at things like the chat that there was meant to be discussions around the potential of having gone out on loan under Brendan at one point. Obviously, he was signed around about the time when Joe Hart was there. We still then insisted on bringing in Kasper Schmeichel. So there's many variables to think based on those assessments, and also despite Kasper's shortcomings at points, he's never been rested and properly been given a crack at the whip. So what does that maybe say about him from a training perspective? What did managers think of him? What I've seen him, he looks decent. I don't think he looks amazing, but at the same time, he looks like, of the alternative options, he's definitely the best option. And based on last night, in my opinion, man of the match performance, multiple good saves, multiple saves that prevented, ultimately a loss. I think he has to start. And for me, he's earned his place on Sunday. And do you think that had we been maybe a wee bit braver, or had Martin Neill maybe been a wee bit braver and chucked him earlier in the first game, does it make a difference across the tie entirely, or is that just fanciful talk, mate?
Hindsight, as you say, we saw that the type of goals that Kasper conceded in the first leg. So we're not here to run Kasper down. Absolutely not. His overall record in his playing career speaks for itself, as it did with Joe. So absolutely not. But we know now that Kasper is playing with an injury, and that is going to affect him being able to dive and save to a certain side. You think that if opposition managers have done their homework in any way, they will also know that, and they will say, right, if we get a chance to get a shot away, it goes to that side because he might struggle with it. Yeah. So, last night, purely just taking last night, the goalkeeper's job is to keep the ball out the net. Sinisalo absolutely did that. A couple of really good saves, and that's it. You judge him, as you say, man of the match performance because he did that. Clean sheet against, as we say, quality side.
Yeah.
So that's it.
And mate, the saves he had to make, I know there's obviously the one that goes in and it's the phantom goal. We'll go on to that as well. But every other save that he had to make it, we're not talking Snyder's. There's some good saves in there, by the way. There's some proper good saves. And again, hindsight, and it's easy. And I don't want to pile on Kasper Schmeichel because, let's call it as it is. He's been pretty rough as of late. And definitely has deserved to be moved out of the team. And ultimately, as I say, I think he should also be looking at last night, looking at that performance, and leadership from him would also look a bit like holding your hands up and going, do you know what? I think he's ready. I think you maybe need to take one for the team. And as you say, he's playing with an injury, getting these injections and stuff. That's servicing nobody. It's no servicing him if he's wanting to go to a World Cup. It's certainly no servicing us, and it's giving an advantage. What's interesting on that as well is, I know folk don't like his bringing up the other side of Glasgow, but Wiggy, as he's getting called, Mr. Rowe, done an interview, and he actually was asked about Celtic and done the usual playing it down. Well, we're not concerned about them. They're behind us and all this. But he mentioned the goalkeeping thing.
Yeah.
And I can't help as well, though, to think that us playing a different goalkeeper can be something of a masterstroke, because let's not kid ourselves on. I think any team that plays us will look at Casper and look at the deficiencies, and they're working on playing against that.
Yeah.
So, it could be a masterstroke in itself, let alone just giving the guy the gloves because he's earned it to stick him in on Sunday.
Yeah, as I said, I mean that is what. Not just the Rangers manager, but every manager that's come up against Celtic this season, okay, they'll be looking at two things. One, yes, the Casper situation. Where is he weakest? Previously, we talked about he doesn't really come off his line now for any balls in the air, even to punch him away. He's very static. I think was it the goal against? Was it Kilmarnock, the kind of header down where he's kind of stuck on his line? There was then the one that went over the top of him because again he's stuck on his line. We're not here to denigrate Casper, okay? But if you are a player anywhere in the outfield and you go through a run of a game where your form isn't really what it should be, then you can expect as that player, the manager will be looking and saying, there's somebody breathing down my neck, training in that squad every single day that says, I want to be playing in that position because I think I can do a better job. Not through lack of confidence or whatever. And as I say, no player goes out on the pitch to deliberately have a bad game or make mistakes or whatever.
Absolutely not.
But,
no chance.
But yes, you need to look at it and say, at the present time, Casper's run of form hasn't been great. Sinisalo came in, had a good game. You're also, the managers will look at, say, Celtic this season, very susceptible to high balls into the air. We've conceded a lot of goals that, are free headers and are headers because we're not picking up defenders at the back post and whatever. Yeah. The kind of the Tenecti one against Hibs where the guy got in past him. So yes, as I say, opposition managers will be looking at that. So if Martin thinks that a change, he's obviously going to be without Austin. So there's a change that's forced on him. So, why not look and say, we're not going to dump Casper onto the bench for the rest of the end of the season. He's going to be very important in the run-up, I'm sure. But just at this present time, possibly to let the injury settle down, to maybe get a bit of the flack away from him or whatever. I don't see it's going to be too much of a loss situation for Martin if he chooses Sinisalo to start on Sunday.
It's not. I think that based on the performance last night, certainly Sinisalo has earned it. He has to play. In his post interview, he says all the right things, as you imagine. The goalkeepers union, the teammate union. It's he's been really supportive of me and all that kind of stuff. He's not going to sit there and go, say anything like, fucking I deserve it. But he says, I've given him a chance, I've done my bit, I want to play. He's not missed there. And I think that you've got to give him it. And as you say, obviously I hope he does play. I think there's multiple reasons what I'm about to sort of throw out there, and Brown Warriors are wooden to some of them as well in the comments there, why he should play. But it is also win-win for Martin and Neill and the guys. They make a decision that people are crying out for. If it were to work, brilliant. We gave you what you wanted and it worked out. You grabbed it. If it doesn't, then we tried it.
Yeah.
So it really is. At this point in time, I just want to see Celtic, I want to see our management team doing everything, exploring every possibility to get the job done. I really don't care. I will criticise less for mixing it up and trying new things than I will just going with the status quo, doing the same thing, expecting the different results. That's where I'm at with it. Yep. Brown Warrior says here, and this is definitely one that I want to touch on most, but it's still on Sinisalo. What I liked about him was there's a level of urgency about him.
Mm-hmm.
His reactions, his pace, he closes quick.
Yep.
You know, anytime there was a ball that looked as if it was going to be getting sniffed through, he was coming out, he was anticipating to get out there and collect. Yep. Spilled ball, he was down to get it, you know, things like that. And of course, obviously, we see the saves and the reflexes, they speak for themselves. The one in particular, but it's into the second half, the ball comes across and it's kind of almost like a half volley. That's a cracking save.
Yeah,
you know, that's an absolutely cracking save. And then, of course, in the first half, there's the one that is down and low to his left as well. And not to criticise, I did say in one of my groups, it's like, I reckon that maybe goes past Kasper Schmeichel. He just looks so much more agile, quick and reactive. Now, what he won't have is Kasper Schmeichel's maybe instincts. You know, those sort of like snap saves where the ball's just 2 yards away and he sticks out a big stupid hand because he's that used to doing it.
Or he blocks it with his chest or whatever.
Maybe he doesn't have that, but certainly for the shot stopping and the reactions, and I actually thought he looked slightly better at corners and stuff as well. I genuinely think that the defensive unit just looked a wee bit more comfortable than it has. But for me, there's more positives to Sinisalo playing than there is negatives. 100%.
Yeah. As I say, we're not here to run Kasper down. Absolutely not. You know, he's been great for our club over the course of his time. But as I say, the concerning thing is if he's playing through with this injury that's going to affect him being able to make certain saves, then, you know, you have to look at that and say, we need a fully fit squad, you know, the fittest guys that we can have, because we know it's probably going to be a physical game against Rangers. And that's also something that we'll need to bear in mind. You know, there will be, as I say, high balls into the box. So Sinisalo's going to have to come out and deal with some of them, you know, either catch them, punch them away, but he can't be stuck on his line. Bearing in mind, as I say, that we've lost Austin as well. So, you know, I'm sure we're going to discuss the kind of defensive situation as well.
I'm glad you brought that up, that physical side, because that is, again, is maybe the only thing that you can maybe worry about, if you want to say, in terms of Sinisalo. He's quite a lean goalkeeper. That, again, you don't need to be a tank. Oh. There's great goalkeepers out there, but certainly that physical edge. I mean, you know, we can argue and just say, well, what's the difference anyway? Because Kasper doesn't exactly command, you know, and clatter into defenders and things like that as enemies. So you're not losing anything by not having him in. But no, I definitely think that when you look at some of the big guys that they're going to have in there, probably Chermiti, the likes of Fernandez, you know, they're going to be looking to use that. Maybe a Suttering types, they're going to use, as we always know, utilise balls into the box, where that's corners, free kicks, long throws, and they're going to look at that element of sort of physicality, bashing into the goalkeeper. So that is maybe the one thing that you could say about Sinisalo, that maybe it's something that he'll eventually add to his game, a wee bit more physicality. But the reactions and stuff, I think itself, and as we know as well, mate, goalkeepers are a protected species, so it shouldn't really matter much. See, as long as he's not coming out and flat him at it, as long as he's looking as if he's going to collect that ball and he gets a dunt, he's probably going to get the foul against him anyway. But yes, let's talk then defensive, because that's going to be huge. Obviously, it was makeshift. We're not going to get Trusty, because Trusty had another Trusty moment and get his red card. Scales is on the bench. We have Tierney's on the bench as well. And of course, we then go with Donovan, Murray, Sriracha. Where are you at with this? Because all routes pointed to it was going to be big Benjamin Arthur getting chucked in alongside Scales. I've championed, as have many, the idea of how do we get Tierney, Sriracha, Araujo, you know, many of them in the team, as many of them as possible, even going a wee bit mental and thinking, right, well, would I go with Tierney, Scales, and Araujo in there, or Tierney, Scales, and maybe Benjamin Arthur, so that I can use Sriracha and Araujo as like wingers there?
Yeah.
Murray, I think, is one that we've got to mention here, because I've never been a huge fan of Murray. I've not had that. I think there's something there. Brendan Rodgers seemed to like him. A lot of fans like him, but I still think that I don't feel that he's quite ready, but he does have the advantage of more senior games than Benjamin Arthur. And also, I hate saying it, but he's a Celtic lad and he gets it and all that kind of stuff, which can be an advantage, but it could also be something that cripples you because of that level of expectancy. Whereas if you play the big man, who's neither here nor there about it, he's from down south, doesn't care. Obviously cares, wants to win.
Yeah.
He's not caring about the Glasgow rivalry. That's what it is to him. It's another game of football and I'm going to put in a good shift. So where are you at with that, mate? Because I thought Murray done well. A bit messy at times, but done his job well, mate.
Yeah, exactly. Again, dropped into the team. Martin obviously has enough confidence in him that says, I trust you to go in against Stuttgart and and be able to handle the pressure. You then see how his performance went. I don't think he made any glaring errors during the game. So yeah, it is what it is. You've got to give him credit for handling that game and that pressure, having not played so many minutes. But then again, we could say the same about Sinisalo. We could say the same about Luke McGowan. So yes, I think probably over the way I would look at it is that Murray will be more used to the physicality of the Scottish game in general than Arthur will. And that's purely because Arthur hasn't had as many minutes.
But see that athleticism that he appears to have, I know small sample size against Hibs, could that in itself be what we're looking for? Or do you just need that dogfight in you?
No, I mean, it could absolutely be. I mean, if you think back, I mean, I remember when Virgil first came to the team, right? Now, you were looking at Virgil and you were thinking, here's a boy, although he's a central defender, he was so comfortable with the ball at his feet. He wasn't like he could put in a tackle, don't get me wrong, but he wasn't like, you're really rough and tumble, batter everybody about defender. But what was great for Virgil was he was so comfortable with the ball at his feet and was able to play himself out of trouble on so many occasions, utilising his skill set. I think it will be the same for Arthur. Arthur comes from English football, which is different to Scottish football in the fact that, you need to be more of a ball player as a defender than you probably need up here. So I could see pros and cons for both of them. If it was me, I would probably say it's going to be a 49-51 split as to who starts. It's not an out and out. Or it definitely has to be him, or it definitely has to be him.
I think that's the thing. Is looking at it last night, it's not as definitive as it seemed.
Yeah.
Just because, and I think when I look at it, and this is, I just want to cast the net now and talk about the side in general, and let us know what you guys think here. Now, let's look at the side, right? Now, we have Donovan, who I think gives a good account of himself as well, but I think he's just played himself into more of contention. I would maybe consider using Donovan as a kind of almost like a winger type option off the bench if we need it, because I think he covers the ground, gets forward quite well. So I can almost write him off, right? Then you look at it and you say, who else have I got that played for quite a bit of period of time that wasn't? McCown, he does 68 minutes, right? Yang, he does 68 minutes. Adamu, I think he just needed the time anyway. But Murray sees the end of the game. Sirachi sees the end of the game. And these are the guys that I would think, they're the guys that are going to be thinking in. I would maybe want to introduce to the game.
Yeah.
Do you think, based on the fact that they covered so many minutes, that alone makes you just go, they won't play them because they've done the full 90 or they've done 65? They could be tired. Do you think that comes in? Do you think that gives them more or less chance of squeezing into the team?
No, not necessarily, because Calmac lasted the 90 and he's absolutely going to be a starter on Sunday. So I think in terms of getting guys game time and saying, right, go out, do your job. You again get this confidence of, I've played, I haven't made any mistakes, I've contributed well, we've won the game, we've got a result that nobody or not very many people foresaw coming. So it's that balance of some players just need minutes on the park. They will play every single minute of every single game, and it won't really affect them that much. Again, there'll be a wee dip in form as the season progresses because of whatever. But generally, as I say, I wouldn't take it as read that just because Sarachi lasted the whole game, that definitely means that Kieran, obviously, I think, will start. But as you mentioned yourself, where will Kieran start? Will he decide to go a 3 at the back with Sarachi and Arojo as wing backs, and tweak it up front a wee bit? We didn't really mention Iheanacho very much. He came on at the latter stages of the game last night, and again was very involved and potentially, gave us another a look at, well, is he now getting back to a bit of fitness where he should be considered for a start in some of these games, as well as Kvanchara and Adamu. It's good now to have those kind of options available rather than saying, well, we would play him, but he's injured. So, absolutely. Brown Warrior there, a back three, Murray, Scales, Tierney. As I say, I think the only thing there is whether it's Murray or Arthur, but deploy wing backs, bulk out the midfield, and then just get in behind the.
So let's do the midfield then. Since we're talking about it, as I said, rather than just breaking down, I need a chance here. Let's just talk about it, because last night was more for me food for thought for Sunday. What can we do? What options can we get? Who's shown something? Who showed a bit of that's what we need, taking a chance. So let's talk about the midfield. Last night we go, of course, McCown, McGregor, Hatai, right? And wings, of course, of Yang and Maeda with Adamu through the middle, right? So logic, or not logic, predictability tells you it's probably going to be McGregor, Nygren, and Oxlade-Chamberlain. That's pretty much, I think, what you're going to get there, right? I think that when I look at Hatai and McCown and McGregor in general, I thought the performance wasn't too bad. Much like a lot of the teams, it was a bit hear 'em, scare 'em at times. It was a bit, there's points where they just dig in and boot the ball clear and not really play any level of, cultured football. But that's fine. I'm all right with that. I'm quite happy with that. Hatai, for me, one of his better games, but again, largely underwhelming. I think that he looked a lot more suited. He was a bit more defensive in his role, and for whatever reason, he seemed to do all right. He seemed to look, for some reason, a wee bit more comfortable with the game in front of him, rather than receiving the ball with one or two guys, on his back and having to do it. Because the Hatai of old would thrive in that. You'd get the ball, first one would be a hand there, and it'd be that burst forward to turn, pivot, make the pass, or burst forward to a run. That's not been happening, right? So he's been slightly pulled back a wee bit. And I just felt that with the game in front of him a wee bit, and being able to see the game, rather than with the game back to his game, with the game to his back, at times, it worked. Enough to get a starting lineup, certainly not for me, not enough. Bare minimum, similarly what I said about Bernardo against Stuttgart the last week. I described it as underwhelmingly steady. Not disastrous, not shite, but didn't really do much to influence the game. So I can disregard him. McCown's the one, though, that we've got to talk about, because he's tore the fan base at points down the middle, I think, and even maybe with the manager. Maybe it's to do with confidence, a bit of mouth. The comments around about Nancy, and then obviously last night, and I was kind of going, I like the sentiment, I like the confidence, but fuck's sake, man, come on. No team touches us, not, mate, come on. I get it, I like it, I like the confidence, mate, but, maybe dial it back a wee bit, and you don't give people ammunition. Does he have a chance? Because I think that you need to play Oxlade-Chamberlain for the undoubted qualities, but at moments he can change it. Cal McGregor's never going to get dropped. And I just think you need Nygren, because he doesn't offer us, and you'll get criticised. Nygren is brilliant. He's Marmite to the fans. I'll take a guy that's scoring his amount of goals all day long, mate. But we can't lie and say that you lose a lot. You lose fight, you lose mobility, you lose tackling. What do we do here, mate? What do we do?
Well, you've still got Brown's comment up there. So if we go 3 at the back with 2 fullbacks, with 2 kind of wing backs, that gives you 3. That gives you 3 in the middle, which let's just for talking's sake at the minute say that would be Ox, Cal Mack, Luke McCowan, and then 2 up front with your choice of Iheanacho, Kvanchara, Adamu as one of them, with Nigrin kind of in behind. So more of a kind of diamond in that, Nigrin can come back and assist in midfield when it's required, when we've not got possession. But as Nigrin has done all the season, when we have the ball and we're attacking, you get that ball into the box, and 8 times out of 10, he's going to be right place, right time to get the ball in target and hopefully score. So, that's a potential. You could look at that. But as we all know, Martin is very, very reluctant to change formation in terms of that. We haven't seen any kind of fluctuation from the kind of 4-3-3. Sunday might absolutely surprise us. But as you say, McCowan definitely did enough last night to be talked about as a starter, the same as Sinisalo. Absolutely.
I think with Nigrin, I'm with you on that, and we said that on the last show. I think you tuck him in as a kind of playing off the striker, in that sort of 10. He's just behind, because when we look at it, we think back to last night, right? Adamu gets the ball, it's a good wee sort of knockback, and we see I call him, as of late, the deck chair, Big Finchara, because the Lilo, he's always in his back, but he's playing in, and the ball's going to inevitably fall forward, and that's when I just think Nigrin could come alive and get that shot off, or be that guy that makes the run onto that loose ball. And there's no doubt, he's got to be said, he's something of a luxury. He is something of a luxury. I'll take the luxury of his goals, by the way, 100%, because where would we be without them? And that's just what I think. There needs to be, in a game like against Rangers, where you need to have your full contingent in midfield doing their component parts, the tackling, the backtracking, the ball winning, as well as the passing and trying to influence it. He's not going to give us that. But what he will give us is the goal threat. So how do we shoehorn him in and play him further forward, where he can just sort of maraud around and look for the scraps? Because, as I say, when you bring him over and he's left or right, if he's moving about, there is always a gaping space, and it ultimately puts a wee bit more pressure on whoever that is going to be on the wing. Yang last night, he plays. I didn't think he was bad. No. 1 or 2 decent moments, but I would still very much prefer the option of the likes of Araujo playing that role. I just think it would work, and you'd get him stuck right in about it. Equally over on the left, Taneki gets a bit of appearance time. Again, he doesn't look too bad, but as we've seen time over, and again looking at Sunday, more thinking about Sunday than anything else, I think you can be compact and fill out the midfield, but you're still, it's not like by using Araujo and Sarachi in those positions rather than traditional wingers, your Yang and your Taneki, that you lose some, because they can get bloody well forward. We've seen that with some of the marauding runs for both. They can get forward. I'd arguably say they've got a better ball into the box than both. And we've seen they can get a shot off and all. So I actually don't think it's that mental to think about trying to use them like that, by the way. I really don't.
You mentioned earlier, so Danny appears to have his kind of plan for putting us under pressure. Martin should also be looking at what the plan is for putting Rangers under pressure, and again, coming up with something different to say, right, let's go. You've still got Tenekti capable of coming off the bench. You've got Maeda capable of coming off the bench, as the opposition having played 45, 60 minutes or whatever, and maybe a bit more tired. You've got these options available to you. Yang absolutely will come in on the right-hand side and be able to do your job. It's just when is the best time to deploy
Sorry to jump in there. So apologies for jumping in, but you got me thinking, and I just want your take on that then. You've mentioned that. Taneki's looked great coming off the bench, right? Yang, again, he's had good points when he started, but a lot of good coming off the bench.
Yeah.
Right? And Maeda, let me know what you thought in general of him last night and how that reflects on looking towards Sunday. So does that in itself not tell you we're maybe better trying to do the Sriracha and Araujo thing and using these guys off the bench for impact?
You know, again, it's trying to keep your opponent guessing. You know, it's coming up with these, you know, mad. If we were on a great run of form, if we had a settled 11 and we say, listen, all these guys are playing really, really well, and you can't really drop them just for the sake of dropping them because you want to do something different. But we've not seen that. We've seen guys who, as you've said, are a couple of good games, then they kind of fall away a wee bit. Hatate, you know, same as Dyson, and as I've said, I love Dyson to bits because of the amount of work he does. But this season, the two of them have just not been impacting games the way that they have done in previous seasons. So that's also a factor. You can't afford to have anybody out on that park on Sunday, either from the start or right up to the 90th minute, who's not going to make some sort of impact on the game. If Paddy was here, you know Paddy, he talks about any substitutions you make, the guy coming off the bench has got to be at least as good as the guys replacing. You know, definitely. So again, that's things that you've got to bear in mind. So yes, absolutely. There's no risk in playing Sriracha as a wing back. There's no risk in playing Araujo as a wing back because we've seen this season the way their style of play. They're very happy getting forward and getting, you know, almost right up to the end of the box. Araujo scored,
and they're hard on all.
Absolutely, you know. But
that's what I like.
What I was going to say was they're perfectly willing to do the defensive job as well. So see when they're required to sit as a potential back five across that line to help, they will absolutely do the job. If you've got Tenekti or you've got Yang, they're not going to do the defensive side of it in the same way as the two guys that we've mentioned. So it's just getting people who you think will absolutely give you the absolute most that they possibly can for as many minutes of that game. It's not, it's not out of the Wilfred Nonce playbook to say
the madness playbook.
We're going to play these two as wing backs just because I think they can. We've seen it this season. They're very comfortable in both defence and attack. So absolutely no panic if that's what we saw them, Martin, go with a formation on Sunday.
So to finish up then, before we talk about other matters, the big question I mentioned earlier on says I don't think that we've got a striker that you can hang your hat on, right? No. Clearly not. And you only need to look at Neill being a top goal scorer to tell you that. So it begs the question, what on earth do we do against the baddies? Who do we go with? Because I texted into the group, I thought Adamu started good. I liked the mobility, I liked the energy. I liked it. There was points where he was backing in, but like it wasn't like Trinchara, who I think like overplays it. It's like a party piece that is getting a bit shite now. Backing in, and I get it. I've said before, I like that it gets you up the park. I like that it occasionally wins you fouls, but it's winning you less fouls now. And that's whether that's to do with just terrible officials or not is another story, right? We could flog that horse till the cows come home.
Yeah.
But he's not. He doesn't have. He wants to be physical, but he doesn't actually have much physicality, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And look at the guys he's going to be playing against at Rangers. They're always just big, strong, hammer thrower type, muscular. They're going to be putting about. So see if he's not getting awarded these fouls in the box or in around the box against the other teams. You've no chance of getting them against Rangers. It's not going to happen, right? Those guys will just chuck him to the deck on an empty tracksuit. That's where I'm at with it, right? Yep. I like that he wants to be up for the battle, and I like that he shows a bit of fire and he keeps coming back for more. But I don't see it working. I mean,
No.
I'm happy. Look, I'm just a guy in a podcast, right? I'm happy to be wrong all the time. Happy to be wrong. I hope he scores 3, and I'm sitting going, well, I never seen that coming. What the fuck do I know? But I'm just looking at it at face value, and I think we can't go into that. We can't go into that game with that tactic of him batting in and trying to do something, because it's not really worked that much, to be honest with you. It just hasn't. Adamu, do we maybe look at and say, right, do we try and do, because remember we used to always look at, what have we got the Rangers haven't got? We've got pace, we can get round them. They've got big, lumbering, muscle-bound, heavy guys that are a wee bit slower and they just want to rough you up. Reduce that threat by working round them.
Yeah.
Be quicker, be faster, be smarter, rather than trying to be harder, because we don't have that, right? So who do we go with? And I think that undoubtedly Ian Acho looks the most accomplished of all the strikers. But again, is he ready? Is he fit and ready to go? Who do we go with for the start here? I think it's just a toss of the coin. You could literally close your eyes and pick numbers, mate. Turn your back and do numbers.
For me, I would slightly, for reasons you've already mentioned, okay, if we're going to play a game against Rangers where we are trying to put high balls into the box for Kvanchara, if you're thinking it's going to be Suter and the boy Fernandez starting for them, they will absolutely lap that up all day.
Oh, absolutely.
So I think, again, as you said, we start with Adamu to run at them, to get them moving. You can always, bring on Kvanchara later on in the game if that's the way the game is going. You can always bring on Ian Acho later on in the game if that's the way that, we want to try and play. We're maybe, trying to defend something and we want to keep the ball up the other end of the park. But no, I think we've seen in as many games against them previously, Dembele playing against them, Kyogo playing against them, Jota playing against them, even Maeda playing against them. You've got to get the ball on the deck and you've got to get those defenders turned. If you're going to put the ball into the air, they will, they'll coast through that game. Absolutely. So it's got to be Adamu for me starting, and he's got to have good service in facing the Rangers goal. We know as well, Jack Butland is capable of a wee slip and an error.
We're talking about goalies that aren't. We're talking about goalies that make mistakes.
He's not covered himself in glory in certain occasions. So absolutely, I would say Adamu for his pace, running in against the big physical defenders. I think at least once.
What about this, Stevie?
Yeah.
What about this? And I can understand folk thinking he just goes back to type.
Yeah, just that one for Brown there. See if it was all just about pace and pressing down on the defenders. I have no issue. Maeda is the fastest guy in the squad, I would reckon, at the minute. Absolutely. But Maeda's confidence is shot to hell. It's his ability to finish these efforts that would really get to me. I would say, he'll get in behind, but he'll do what he did last night. The ball will get caught under his feet, or it'll be a shot that'll come off the goalkeeper or whatever. He's not the clinical finisher that he was last season. So that's the only reason, again, Maeda is one, absolutely. He's got to come off the bench at some point, because if they've got Tavernier playing at right back, or it might be the younger boy starting, I don't know. But yeah, you want to be utilising the wide areas later on in the game, because I think that's where the space might be. But yeah, absolutely. I think Adamu for me starts because of his pace and the style that he plays, rather than the way Kvanchara plays.
Well, we'll see how it pans out. So from that to other matters, I just want to pose a question to you then, right? And I was thinking about it, as daft as this might sound, because yes, our form has not been fantastic. Does the away game maybe suit us? I know that sounds daft, because we know that there is big problems at Celtic Park. The atmosphere has been library-like at points. Last week it was quite surprising that it took results elsewhere filtering through to really lift the crowd. And the Green Brigade are hugely missed for that noise, right?
Yep.
When we look at the away fans, and I want to say just right now, God bless all those away fans last night. I take my hat off to them. Brilliant. And I'm so happy that we got a result for them.
Yep.
So happy. I was sitting there thinking, as I couldn't help it. Just Celtic have put me in that mindset where I'm going, imagine spending all that money and going over there and getting served up another, what we've seen at Parkhead. That would be brutal. So it was great to see them get the reward and the noise and the atmosphere. And we've seen that in the away games. Away fans where the level, I don't want to use the word toxicity, but the negativity, the disconnect between the board and the fans, which are obviously very audible, as it's going to be at home. And then we hear McGregor and stuff saying, you know what, these things have undoubtedly had a knock-on effect. That's for players to deal with. That's not on us. That shouldn't stop anybody making their voice heard for change, right? But he's mentioned it. So do you actually think that small portion, we know it's going to be ferocious fans backing from start to finish, that the away games are actually maybe going to be your friend? As daft as that sounds.
No, well, you've also got the fact that if you can get yourself ahead in the game, if you can start frustrating the home fans as well, it's not unknown. We've seen it at Celtic Park, we've seen it at other grounds. When you're playing at home and your team isn't doing well, there's going to be people will start to boo, right?
Yep.
Look at Casper a couple of weeks ago. Every time he touched the ball, and it was his own supporters or a certain number of his own supporters that are booing your own player. Mm-hmm. So again, if you're away from home and you can be the opposition team that puts the game in your favour and you're having the best of it, you're also going to have the home support getting on their own team's back. Mm-hmm. So that again, as you say, being away is, certainly, it could be a very good atmosphere to play in terms of you score that early as we did last night. Mm-hmm. Who knows how the home fans are going to react? Because we kind of know that we're getting to the stage of the season where there's less and less room for errors. And when you're coming to, when you're coming to a run, as I say, out of all of Martin's run where he's winning and he's drawing, and then the Hibs game last week, because we lost, it kind of burst our bubble a wee bit. But the Stuttgart performance and result has managed to get us back on. And as I say, it's all down to getting that something in the game on Sunday that will get us the kind of wee hand to say, right, we're in control of this game, we're defending a lead or whatever, or we're at least playing better out the two teams. You start, as you say, you use the word toxicity. There's as much chance of toxicity from the home support towards the own players as there is everywhere. So, so absolutely, the cup game, obviously, because there's more of a kind of a higher number of Celtic fans will be there. That'll be better in terms of positivity. But there will be, absolutely loads of noise from our fans. And again, they'll give it all they've got right through the game, I'm sure.
And do you know what I think as well is massive here? Obviously, when you play these, derbies, as it's very obvious. You want to win, right? You want to win. But I think the difference here is, in terms of maybe us turning the tide of the crowd, I think if we're being honest, right, they expect to scud us, not just beat us.
Yeah.
They expect to scud us now. In games gone by where we were maybe the favourites getting into these games, it's a bit more, the atmosphere around the match from their perspective is maybe a wee bit different. It's, we expect to win, we want to win, but take it as it comes, right? Yeah. Mate, they're expecting to steamroller us. Let's no kid on because of the score that we've seen at Celtic Park, right?
Yep.
So that in itself, as you were saying about turning the crowd and turning the atmosphere, we've got to remember that here. We're getting into this in a completely different situation. We've been going to Ibrox in a long, long time because they expect to hammer us. And I can guarantee you, as they'll expect to hammer any other team that go to Ibrox, right? And we see how it doesn't work if they don't get the performances to go with their expectations. You ramp that dial up more and more and more if it's Celtic that's causing you the problems.
Oh, yeah.
So in terms of that as well, not only the away backdrop, but the lack of expectation they've got on their side, and maybe some of the less expectation, I think it's maybe fair to say, that's from our side to tell what our expectations are this game, could well be brilliant. It could work for us. But as always, the cliche, keep it tight, negotiate the early stages, try and get a foothold in the game. But we need fighters. We need to battle through them, and every man to stand to be counted. That's the most important thing, Neill, and it'll hopefully take care of itself. But I will say, it is must win.
Yeah.
A draw, I would, obviously you'll take a draw because you never want to lose to Rangers, but you need to win.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it puts down a marker to say that we're not out of this race as of yet. You know, Hearts have got the points on the board, but there was news again during the week in regards to some more of their players that are going to be out for, I think Callum Finlay was 6 weeks. The boy Aguiu, he's gone for the rest of the season. So, you know, this is where we will start possibly to see Hearts, you know, having the negative impact of these injuries and trying to get to, you know, they're almost, you know, they're almost within touching distance of getting to the split, still ahead, but they need to get there. And if these injuries to key players still are affecting them, we've seen how it's affected us, losing the likes of Jota and AJ and Cam. You know, this is what happens over a course of a season, is injuries, especially long-term injuries, can really mess up your momentum and your running. So, so you know, hopefully, in terms of us, they've got the points on the board at the minute. They are still grinding out results. We know that. If we were to win every game 1-0 between now and the end of the season, then yes, absolutely. So you know, we just need to take care of our own business, but with a mind on what's happening elsewhere. And you know, don't forget, even looking over our shoulder, I said it before, at this moment in time, Motherwell are absolutely playing the best football in this league.
Coming along.
Absolutely. You know, quiet. You know, yes, they've got points to make up. Yes, they have, but they're certainly capable of taking points off the current top three, absolutely, because, you know, as I say, they're hitting a run of form at the right time now.
Definitely. Well, before we finish up, just one last thing I want to touch on. Just, you know, as more information on this comes out, we'll be able to comment more. You know ourselves, we always like to talk based on the facts rather than just a wee snippet. But I want to know what your thoughts are around about this drive for change. Of course, we'll sit here, as we always say, we are for positive change at board level. We feel that, like everybody else out there, that this board have sold us short for many years. And this season, and the way things have panned out, has just been an absolute culmination. Straw that cracked the camel's back. It's as simple as that. We've got various facets out there that are trying to get changed. We've obviously got the Celtic Trust. They're trying to buy up shares. They're trying to find shares that might have been lost in the shuffle over years for paper to digital. Try to bring that together. Ultimately, trying to get change, not at grassroots level as such, but in the boardroom where you've got voting rights. We've also got the Celtic Supporters Limited, which is David Lowe and Co. Similar idea to the Trust. It's all about generating money to buy up shares. And we've got the Celtic Collective, which is, of course, I would describe it's more of a grassroots type movement. And I think that it's important that we have all these sort of different ones because they need to work in tandem. I think ultimately the likes of the Celtic Supporters Limited, the Trust, and now we're going to talk about this idea from Willie Haughey, those ones are the ones that are essential in terms of, those are the ones that really make you able to influence policy and decision making.
Yeah.
Having shares, having representation, and having voting rights.
Yeah.
Those long term are the ones that need to succeed. The collective plays a different role because it's more grassroots, as I say. It's more in the moment, in the now, and you can still force change by getting those who are crap at their job out and getting hopefully better people in. But ultimately as well, as I say, is the second part, the getting the votes, the getting the rights, the getting the shares, to get in there to add an extra layer of your influence beyond just, influencing who's sitting there is important. So it's good that we've got these two different entities on the go. Yeah. Now, Willie Haughey's come out, and weird man, appears on Go Radio, and he says, I want to basically, in short, he holds up the season ticket holders as being the gold standard. They're the heartbeat of the club. And for every 10,000 of those that sign up, it's not going to cost you anything, just I'm a season ticket holder, I support, yada, yada, yada. I'll donate 2 million quid that will be then handed over to the likes, I think, as a trust to buy up shares to make this happen, right? Cool, I get it. I would also add to that and say I think there needs to be a way to bring in other fans that aren't just season ticket holders, but I understand that's intangible. That's
he did mention a phase 2, to be fair, in his interview.
And understandably, people are sceptical, right? Mm-hmm. They're saying it's a money grab. It's a money grab for the club in terms of make sure you buy your season ticket, because we know that could be in jeopardy with the obviously people are unhappy, so they're like a smoke screen to get folk to buy their season tickets. But we'll wait on more facts to come out. But what I want to say is what's your thoughts on this? Because the main thing, folk are looking at it and going, Sir Lord Haughey, his peership and all that, out my club, don't want him near him. Where's he been? If he's that concerned with this philanthropy, why doesn't he just give the money to somebody else, give the money to the trust, just give them the money and let them crack on? Why the spin? Why is he getting involved? So I can understand. And what I would say as well is we've been stung with the likes of Dermot Desmond and people, wealthy people of standing before. So I can understand they maybe don't want to trust somebody like that. And as I say, I'll give you my honest opinion on it once I know more facts. I'm just talking about it now. But the one thing I would say is this, mate. See, in order for us to get a significant shareholding in the hands of fans to influence in the boardroom and get voting rights, whether we like it or not, we do need wealthy fans who are businessmen or entrepreneurs or whatever. You need folk with money behind you because it's going to speed up the process. Now, where I'm at with it is if he buys it and sticks to his word and says shares will be bought and handed over to Son, I'll have nothing to do with it, then I can't see anything other than positive to that. Yeah. But look, mate, I fully understand the reservations folk have got.
Oh, 100%. Everybody will always look at it from a certain perspective, right? You will, I will, Paddy will, everybody that watches our podcast, everybody that watches Axom, all the others, everybody will look at it from a certain perspective, right? At the moment, we don't have sufficient information, but what we can see is, as you've said already, various organisations trying to do certain things, okay? Mm-hmm. All those organisations, regardless of who you are, you've all got to be working together, because only together can you then do what's required, okay? The sack the board chance. Now, yes, we all totally in agreement. We all know that you need change, right? Mm-hmm. But shouting sack the board, well, it's like water off a duck's backside, okay? It won't do anything. You can't force a change unless you've got some sort of leverage into the boardroom. You know, the idea behind it is fine. We've all seen, we're all frustrated. No problems. You shout, sack the board continuously. You have your protests. I'm not trying to downgrade them at all, but you cannot physically affect the boardroom unless you start getting shares. And you get those shares together, the same as David Lowe's trying to do, as you mentioned, the same as other people are trying to do, as you mentioned. You get to certain levels in the boardroom. So, say, for example, you have 5% of the total shareholding. That allows you certain voting rights, i.e., you can block certain decisions or you can influence certain decisions when it comes to board meetings. You get to 10%, gives you a wee bit more power. You get to, you know, whatever the links are. I think that there are kind of online business sites that you can look and say, right, just exactly. Overall, if all of these organisations got together and were successful in getting 51% of the entire Celtic shareholding, then that means that you are in a position where the likes of Dermot Desmond, the other shareholders, you can make a decision and nobody can outvote you because you have 51. There's not enough left for them to say, oh, we don't like that. Okay. But overall, what he came out and said was very positive because he's been involved. He's been in and around the boardroom for years and years and years. Now, if, as he said, if he manages to get these 10 million, the first thing is, where is he going to buy these 10 million from? And he would need to convince certain people or certain investors to sell shares in order to get this 10 million. I don't think there's 10 million shares or 10 million pounds worth of shares in Celtic just sitting that aren't owned at the moment. So you've got to kind of think me and say, right, who am I? Who can I target to buy these shares from to get that 10 million pounds worth? But yes, his idea is great. David Lowe's idea is great. The collective's idea is great. You know, all these, but at some point they've got to all get round a table and say, we need to work together. Because only together will we kind of move forward in the right way.
That is the one thing I would say. I don't want to labour this point because it's just sort of it's basic ground levels news and announcement at the moment. There's no real sort of proper meeting the bones of the logistics and how it's going to work out. I agree with that and I understand that as well. People are saying, but whose shares is he buying? Yep, I get that. What I would say is, and again, this has just been flippant, I don't care whose shares he's buying, right? Because if the intention is to give it to a fan-based group and allow them to run with it, then it really doesn't matter because they're getting put into, for lack of a better term, into the right hands.
It gives them a voice. It gives them a voice. That's the thing.
So that for me is where I'm at with it. I do agree. Is the 50+1 model that we've seen elsewhere is undoubtedly the gold standard. Whether that's something we could, or everything's achievable, but whether it would actually happen is a different story. Is that there? I think that for me, it's just another thing that's going on at Celtic at the moment. It is a positive thing. It should be looked as being positive, but as I say, we've got all these wee different bits: fans collective, trust, supporters limited. Now Willie Hawley said, bring it all together. There needs to be a way to get it all together. And I understand maybe that might be at this moment in time there might be fractures because of, I don't know, different opinions and agendas. They might, whoever's the head of that one might not like the head of that one, and so on and so forth. Or how can we decide who's in charge? And I get it. There's hundreds of moving parts, but it's good to see that we're trying, and there's people out there, various different people with a heart, with their heart in the right place. And ultimately, that's what we want as well. And here, we'll get criticised for coming on and saying things and that. But ultimately, like everybody that's watching us and fans out there, our intentions are for the best of Celtic. And sometimes, sometimes there needs to be a wee bit of sort of rocking the boat for that to happen. I just think that, and again, just to close on it, the one thing I would say is I understand that people are always sceptical and unsure about wealthy people and people standing in businessmen stuff. But as I said, in order to buy up quicker a number of shares, if and when they're made available, you're going to need these type of fans in here.
Yeah, I mean,
you're going to need it.
At the moment, I think from what we've seen, right, it's an absolutely fantastic idea, but there's not enough information about how it's going to work. I think once it becomes clearer, and there's more information fed out, then absolutely, people will make their own decision. He has come out, whether he's, Lord Hockey or not. Okay, I don't really think you can call into question his love for the club, because he's been involved in certain things around the club since the Fergus McCann days. So it's not just he's a Dermot Desmond puppet or this, that, or the next thing. He's the one who says, no, I see an issue where I want the Green Brigade back in. I want this, that, and the next thing. Okay, but again, he's looking at it from a certain perspective. Other, the collective and different organisations, their focus is, one, getting the Green Brigade back in, but they're not looking at the kind of long term. How do we restructure the club? How do we make our recruitment and scouting better? How do we refurbish the stadium to maybe increase the capacity to get those on the season ticket waiting list actually a season ticket and get them into the ground? So that's what I'm saying. Different perspectives from different groups, and at some point they are going to have to come round the table and say, listen, everybody's point is 100% valid, but which is the short-term priority and which is the long-term priority, and how best do we achieve that?
I think, just to close on that, I think that at the moment there'll be splinter groups, but ultimately, if they get to a stage where individually the sum total of their parts allow you to get the end goal, then I think you'll see them coming together. I think that's
absolutely keeping the fingers crossed for that one, because that's what we've all been crying out for. We need meaningful change, right? How many times have we talked about Bodo, right? Bodo are a club who balance the fact that, yes, they're there as a business, so they can't be throwing money away willy-nilly, but their strength is how they are run as a football club. That's where Celtic have dropped out. We have been successful in business. We've put all this money into the bank. Because of the way Scottish football is over the last number of seasons, we've absolutely dominated domestically, but we have failed to prepare for how the footballing world is evolving. That's where we don't have anybody on the board. We've got plenty of businessmen with business backgrounds and political backgrounds and lawyer backgrounds and stuff like that. But we've got nobody in there who says, I'm bringing the football experience to this club, and I think this is what needs restructured within to make our scouting better, to make our recruitment better. We shouldn't be expressing an interest in players and getting to the last day of the fucking transfer window as we do the last two windows. That's nonsense. That's a club dinosaurs. That is, for me, a big issue that needs addressed quickly. And the only way you'll do that is by affecting what's happening in that boardroom.
Definitely. Well, listen, that'll be us for today. We're just over an hour and 15. Thank you very much to every single one of you that have joined us and getting involved in the conversation here. Plenty to chew fat over, but one thing that we can say, both on and off the field, at this moment in time as we stand today, some positives. That's good. That's what we want. People with their hearts in the right place, off the field, making moves to try and influence the change that we're all shouting out for. A good victory last night changes the narrative, changes the mindset. We'll see how that one pans out. We'll, of course, be back to talk about that in due course. So I just want to thank you, mate, for joining me today, and thanks to everybody there for joining as well. So take care of yourselves. Till the next time, hail, hail. Remember, follow us. See you later. Bye-bye.